Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Comedian Maz Jobrani performs live at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. next week on November 3rd and 4th. He joined me to share his journey as an Iranian-American immigrant and how comedy helps bring people together when the world is in crisis. Hey, Maz Jobrani. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Happy to be here.
And we are talking because you are bringing your Mr. International Comedy Tour to the Kennedy Center. Why are we calling it the Mr. International Comedy Tour? Is there anything, what's in a name, my friend?
We're pleased Mr. International because I wanted Mr. Worldwide, but Pitbull has that. So I had to go. I'm the other bald guy. And also, I tour all over the world. So I was like, what are we going to call this? And also in the act now, I talk about some of my travels. As a comedian, it used to be back in the day. I'm like when I was a comedy fan back in the 80s and 90s, stand-up comedy was basically just national. You do all the comedy clubs in America and you'd be done. But now, myself and a lot of comedians, we're now in the Middle East, we're in Australia, we're in Europe, we're in Asia. It's really become an international art form, and so I figured before anybody else takes that title, let me get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really great that, comedy is becoming globalized, but it's a crazy time in the world to be doing shows. I mean, we got a couple wars going on now. It's a horrific time. A lot. We got Russia and Ukraine. We got Israel, Palestine. Like it's a rough time, but don't you think comedy is probably what we need now more than ever?
Yeah, it's really. Listen. First of all, my heart goes out to I'm a human being first and foremost. So when I see the fighting and the wars and all of the atrocities, it breaks my heart. And then I also understand people who will say, well, it's not a time to laugh. And I go, listen, I get it. Some people just they can't imagine going somewhere and laughing, and I totally get it, and I sympathize with them. For me. I sit there and I go, well, what can I do? What's my job? And my job is to hopefully bring laughter and escape for an hour and a half to 2 hours and bring people together. I've had shows where people from different backgrounds come together, even when the world's in conflict, and we laugh together and we find our common humanity. And I think that's what I can do and I continue to do. It's not easy for me, again, as a human being, to sit there and go, oh, let me be funny right now, even though I just watched a video of something that is just atrocious.
Yeah. No.
So I do my best. I do my best, and I've got others on my tour with me. In DC, we're going to have on Friday night. There's Zarna Garg. She's of Indian descent. She was actually born in India. She's Indian. Then there's Amir K and and Tehran. They're both Iranian Americans. That's Friday night, and then Saturday night it'll be all of us except Zarna can't join us; she has to leave. But basically, everyone brings a little bit of flavoring, and everyone brings some jokes and some laughter into a room, and it really is cathartic, And in comedy is interesting because you never know what's going to be a controversial joke. Like I'll tell you an experience I had back when the Sandy Hook elementary shootings happened. I was in Atlanta doing shows that weekend, and that night I had to go on stage, and I have a lot of material about my kids. And that was a shooting that had happened in a school with a lot of young kids, and I never thought that my jokes that felt pretty harmless about just like jokes about having your kids and how hard it is to have young kids and all that stuff. I never thought that would bring tears to people's eyes. And I was looking out in the audience, and there was people actually tearing up because of the experience we'd had. That was a tragic experience. And so, it's this thing that's got a lot of emotions. But overall, I think the emotion that people leave with when they come to these shows are the emotion of togetherness, of coexistence, and some much needed relief.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. And you joined us a couple years ago when you came I think you filmed your first Netflix special at the Kennedy Center a couple years back. What was it, like 2017 or something? So I heard a little of your backstory then, but in case maybe some of our listeners missed it, remind us. I like to always paint like a somewhat chronological journey. So I know you were born in Tehran but moved here at what age? Like pretty young, right?
Yeah, born in Iran, moved to America when I was 6 years old. Grew up in Northern California, and then now I live down in Southern California. And obviously, in my act, I talk about my background, but I talk about a lot of things, and I talk about again being a parent, talk about getting older, talk about my observations about the world today. The special you're referring to is my Netflix special called Immigrant, where I shot that at the Kennedy Center in 2017 when there was a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment in America. I mean, there continues to be, but back then it was really heating up. And so at the show, one of my goals was to show that immigrants actually love America, they contribute to America. And again, we see a lot of times, like even with what's going on right now with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I just saw some right-wing person talking about how as we have Afghan refugees coming and we might have Palestinian refugees coming, and they were claiming that these people are going to be dangerous to America. And I just like to remind Americans that the biggest threat to Americans are Americans. And I also like to remind people that statistically speaking, immigrants have contributed to America. We're the land that accepts refugees. We're the land that gives hope to refugees and allows them to come here and excel. And I personally
Absolutely.
left. Yeah, I left the Iranian Revolution. So it's like, you know, all of that to say that I believe once again that the my journey does definitely help me express myself in a way of acceptance and laughter, and I think it's a show that is open to any and all. Like, come one, come all, let's laugh together, and so that's what I try to do.
Oh, so you're so well said. Yeah, there was especially what you're saying about, we're supposed to be the land of the immigrant. And what was it? There was like a Ken Burns documentary a couple years ago, was it the U.S. and the Holocaust, about how we were supposed to be a golden door, accepting at that time Jewish refugees here, but it was sort of criticizing how America kind of was closing off during the Holocaust. Or in your case, you came during the Iranian Revolution. I mean, it doesn't matter where you come in the world, what side, quote unquote, sides you are on any issue. To me, I believe we were supposed to be the land of immigrants. But
Yeah,
all
and
right,
also, real quickly to that point, I think that whenever there's any kind of immigrants coming to America, we've seen this historically. There's always a backlash against those immigrants, whether it was Italians in the early 1900s, the Irish, like you said, the Jews, the Middle Easterners, whatever. There's always a backlash. But I think again, once again, you got to realize that people come here and they try to make a better life. And so again, that's why I called that special, the Netflix special is called Immigrants. If people want to look it up, they can look it up, and they'll see that I go around the room and I welcome everyone who's there, and it's a room filled with different people and different backgrounds, and we laugh together.
absolutely. Well, we're 10 minutes into this thing, and I'm talking Ken Burns immigration and refugee documentaries. Man, let's crank up the comedy a little bit. I mean, I guess we had to address the elephant in the room of what all the craziness going on in the world, but there is a lot of everyday life stuff that's hilarious too. You mentioned a couple seconds ago, you talk about parenting, getting older. I mean, what are some? I don't mean to spoil your punchlines, but I don't know what sort of general topics or something do you get in? Like, what's rough about parenting for you right now?
Well, listen, I mean, it's again, this is something that I think parents can relate to, and also if you're not a parent, you get it. It's like my kids are now teenagers, and it's just such a strange thing to go into this phase of their lives, and how we have to like wrap our heads around them no longer being our babies. I mean, no matter what you say and think, your babies are always your babies. And I talk about on stage how to this day I'm not making this up. I have an aunt who talks to me like I'm a baby. I'm 51 years old, and when she talks to me, I'll talk to her and she'll be like, "How you doing? How's everything going, Muzzy Wuzzy?" And I'm like, "I'm not Muzzy Wuzzy. I'm 51." She's like, "Oh, that's so cute." And I'm just like, I have a mortgage lady, and she's like, "Mortgage, mortgage." It's this thing I think that we ourselves have other adults do to us, and now I feel like I'm trying to do it with my kids. But it's just a strange thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around, that they're teenagers now, and I actually have sympathized, or I should say, I've had sympathy from some audience members. I was actually doing a show in Philly. This was an interesting thing to me because my daughter's 12, my son is 15. Anyone who's got teenagers knows their rooms are a mess. I mean, it looks like they go in there, they're the Tasmanian devil, they just go in circles and walk out. And I was doing a show in Philadelphia that was, this actually was very entertaining to me. There was a father, mother, and their teenage daughter who was a few years older than my kids. they were in the audience, and I'm doing crowd work. I'm talking to them, and then I go, "Oh, how old are you, young lady?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm 17." And then I said, "So let me ask you a question, guys. Do their rooms get cleaner?" And the father fell out of his seat laughing, and it was so funny to me because he had been laughing like okay, but that was the biggest punchline of the night to him. I wasn't even trying to be funny. I literally, I honestly was wondering if their rooms get cleaner, and this guy's like, ah, and he
That
just
got him.
falls
That
out.
got him.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh no, you give me no hope that the kid's
Yeah.
room's gonna get cleaner." So, it's things like that. It's observations like that. It's observations about the world we're living in right now. It's talking about my travels. I talk about some social media stuff. I've decided to integrate some social media um, confrontations I've had online, which I found very funny,
Oh,
into the
do you
show.
actually pull like on the screen? You show the tweets or the
Yeah,
X's?
yeah,
Wait, is it
yeah,
tweets or is it X's? I don't even know what to call
I
it now.
I don't know. I call them exits now. I don't know
Exit.
what they're called. In all honesty, Jason, I had never done this, but I've started to do what you just said, is to put stuff like kind of use an audio visual kind of experience. And because part of it is I put out a special earlier this year on YouTube. It's called The Birds and the Bees. And this was a special talking about when my kids were just a little bit younger, talking about the experiences of going through COVID with them and all that stuff. But once that special came out, it's interesting because specials are a double-edged sword for comedians because people can go watch the special and then they come to your show and then they go, "Wait, I've already heard those jokes. So you got to write new jokes." So as you're watching your special, you're like, "Oh, so it's so cool. The world can see it now." And you go, "Oh no, the world can see it now." So I've been working on new materials. So people that come out will see this audio visual experience that I'd never used in the past, but I've started to use now. And it's been fun. I think people are enjoying it because you get to see, we all have our own experiences online, but you guys get to kind of laugh at the stuff I have to go through, and I think people have been enjoying it.
It is a crazy world where, you're, especially for a public figure like you, where anyone can reach out at any time, but they can do it anonymously, but you have to respond as you. Like the social media is such a wild beast, man. But yeah, so what I'm trying to think what else is it's Halloween's coming up. Do you know what you're dressing as this year?
Oh my God, Jason, I've been touring. I've been all over the place. And the honest truth is I haven't even thought about Halloween. It's so strange because like I said, when you have time, like again, going back to Pitbull and Mr. Worldwide, I was actually in Florida recently and they invited us to go to some NASCAR race to go check it out. I've never been in a NASCAR race. And I'm standing there and here comes Pitbull. I guess he owns a race team and I wanted to like tap him on the shoulder and be like, "Yo, I went as you a few Halloweens ago." Because the truth is, I'm bald, I got a goatee, and my wife is Indian, and she's kind of got darker skin. So I told my wife, I go, "You need to go as J Lo, and I'll go as Pitbull." And that was one of my favorite outfits I've done in a long time. And then each year I try to be, creative. Coming out of the pandemic, I got a panda suit and a Mick Jagger mask, and I was going around pointing at it. I go, "What is this?" I go, look at this. Look at the mask, look at the outfit." And people were like, "Mick Panda?" I go, "No, Panda Mick. It's a pun."
Ah,
Nobody,
pandemic. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, nobody got it. So I don't know. I gotta see if I do something this year, or if I just go as myself.
Wouldn't it have been funny if you showed up to the NASCAR thing and were like, "Hey, Pitbull, I'm dressed as you," and he's like, "I'm going as Maz Jobrani," and you kind of
Yeah,
mirror.
exactly. Yeah.
You two could do the old, what was it, the duck soup Groucho Marx, the mirror thing.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That was great. Yeah, no, he's great. I enjoy listening. He's always like positive and stuff. It's always interesting when you see a celebrity of that level and you're thinking to yourself, "Gosh, I have no idea if the guy has seen me in anything or not." And then you don't want to be like the thousandth person who walks up to him and is like, "Hey, Pitbull, like you're
Yeah.
bald, I'm bald. I was like it's just funny to me. It's like you just never know. I ran into especially when you're like out of context. I was in New Zealand at a museum in Auckland, and I saw John Cho, and he'd gone to Cal, UC Berkeley, I'd gone to UC Berkeley, and it was funny because I saw him and we were like in the same tour group going to see something, and I was like, wait a minute, it was so out of context, and I kind of was like, "John," and he didn't know who I was, and he kind of looked at me like, "What? Like, who are you?" And I was like, I don't know what to
John,
tell
we're going to White Castle.
him. Exactly. I
What
feel like an
wasn't he
idiot.
just Wasn't he just in? Was he in season 2 of the After Party?
Yeah, I've seen. I just saw the first episode of that. He was in that. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right. I remember going like, "That's the dude from New Zealand."
that's the dude.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
well, what about? I'm trying to think. What else? I mean, obviously, when you're coming to the Kennedy Center, there's got to be some like DC somewhat type of jokes. I mean, when we had Dana Carvey on a couple weeks ago, and his Biden and Trump are unbelievable,
Oh my
unbelievable. The
God.
guy's a genius. But I don't know. I'm not gonna make you do an impersonation. I know that's not really your thing. But like, what kind of joke areas do we go in? Do we talk about the current president, the former president, all the indictments, and all this crazy crap that's going on? All the speaker
First
that
of
was
all,
we can't find a Speaker of the House at the moment.
yeah, first of all, Dana Carvey is one of my favorites, and that guy's so fantastic. I'm so jealous you got to talk to him for a little bit. I would love to just hang out with that guy and just let him go wild. And but that's great. And yeah, I don't do impressions, but the truth is, DC is amazing because I've said this. I've been coming to DC now since like around 2005 when we did the Axis of Evil comedy tour with me and a few other Arab American comedians, Ahmed, Aaron Cater, Dino Vidala. And I always say how whenever I come to DC, I feel like DC is like the real deal. I live in LA. I go in LA, like, in DC, I go, I meet people. I go, what do you do for a living? They go, oh, I work for state. I work for the agency. I work for this and that. And in LA, you go, what do you do? And they go, well, I'm researching a role of a guy who works for the agency. It's like we play the real things that you guys do. And so I'm always kind of like in awe of the DC folks. And the truth is, obviously during the Trump administration, I had a lot of Trump jokes, and it got to a point where it was like, after January 6th, I honestly was like, okay, I don't need to talk about him anymore. He's going to go away. And how wrong was I?
Ah,
He's back, and he's relentless, and he's like the game Tetris. He just keeps coming, and you just got to keep pushing those blocks away.
dun,
Um,
dun, 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 dun.
that should be his theme song everywhere he goes.
In more ways than
But
one, yeah.
yeah, but the truth is, it's like, in DC, even if I don't have like current material about politics, you have to talk about it. Like the fact that they can't figure out a speaker, there's going to be some. I'm sure I'll allude to that. I'm sure George Santos will say or do something the day before I come that will lead me to talk about him a little bit. I mean, it's just DC's great. I love DC because also, by the way, everybody knows what you're talking about. Because if you go, and it's true, you don't think about this, but when you go
Right.
to other parts of the country or other parts of the world, if you make a reference to something that's political, not everybody knows what you're talking about.
You
But in
go right
DC,
over their
everybody,
heads.
yeah, so I love that. So I'm looking forward to. I'll probably have a few minutes at the top, going like, oh, DC, you guys have a Congress that's not that's kind of stuck and not passing any laws, and then maybe the joke is like, well, why start now? You haven't passed any laws in many years, like you guys have
Right.
been pretty ineffective,
Right.
or making fun of the fact that again, I always talk about how easy it is to complain because you got these like the MAGA Republicans who are now holding up everything. Like they're always complaining about, well, this isn't happening and the border, this and this and that. And then now they're like, okay, well, you're in charge. And they're like, well, we can't even get a leader to get anything started. So it's like, well, it's a lot easier to actually complain than it is to govern. So it's interesting to see all that happening right now.
Absolutely. Well, it's cool that you keep coming back to You've come to DC so many times over the years. Like you mentioned, Axis of Evil comedy tour. Guessing, would you said that was '05? I guess that was during the Bush administration. And then you came and performed at the White House, didn't you, during the Obamas in early 2016?
Yeah, that was really cool, man. 2016. So they do Nowruz, which is the New Year celebration that is done around the world. Persians do it, Tajiks, Afghans, all around the world, and so they celebrated. One thing that the Obama administration was doing was they were inviting different people from different backgrounds to celebrate their New Year's and other events at the White House, and it was really really a beautiful experience. And so we got to go there, and as you said, I got to stand at that podium where these guys always give their speech. And I got to do a couple of jokes, and then I got to bring up the First Lady Michelle Obama. And I will tell you, it wasn't just a career highlight; it was a life highlight. I mean, the fact that some kid from Iran who comes from this background that like doesn't even like my parents didn't even know what stand-up comedy was. Like in my culture, like being a performer or being in the arts is like looked down upon. You may as well be a drug dealer. And so for me to come here and kind of fight my parents who wanted me to be a lawyer, doctor, or engineer or something, and then end up at the White House getting a chance to introduce the first lady was really just like that was the American dream. And so yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, I love DC, man. DC is one of my favorite places. If I had to pick another place to live in the States, DC would definitely be at the top of one of those places.
That's awesome. All right. Well, you've been generous with your time. Before we run, I guess, if our listeners are excited to come see you and maybe want to catch up on some of your material, what's like the latest, streaming or something that we can plug? Is it Pandemic Warrior on Peacock? Is there any, where should we go
No,
to check out your stuff?
the best thing to do is they can go to YouTube, which is free, and they can watch the special called "The Birds and the Bees," or they can go on Netflix and watch "Immigrant." Those are two easy ones to catch. Or they can just go to my social media. It's all at Maz Jobrani. I've uploaded a lot of clips on TikTok and Instagram, and people can just kind of check some of those out, and then come out and expect some new material. And I think it's going to be a fun night. It's going to be a fun night of healing and much needed togetherness.
Absolutely. Well, we'll try to get this posted in the next couple of days and get the word out so people can get their tickets and keep working on that Halloween costume, my friend. Pitbull. I was thinking, I was just dawned on me. I think you should go as The Rock, and he should go as
Yeah.
you, and you can
Now you're
you can call him Maz Jobrani.
Dude, The Rock. That's what I should do. I think I might do The Rock. I just gotta like start lifting real quickly and see if I can boost up my muscles. But
He always called everyone when he was in wrestling. He called everyone jabronis.
well, yeah, that was like started back in the day by the Iron Sheik, and so one of my specials called Brown and Friendly, I actually got the Iron Sheik to come out and curse me out and call me jabroni and all that stuff. It's pretty funny. That's online too, actually. It's a really funny little interaction we have. Of course, we lost the Sheik.
We just
this
lost the
past
Sheik.
year.
He died. What
Yeah,
was it?
yeah.
Last year, 2 years ago, something like that.
It was just I think it was this past year he passed away. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was a legend, man. And but yeah, he started Jabroni, and The Rock carries it on.
Yeah, well, Maz Jobrani is going to be coming to the Kennedy Center for the Mr. International Comedy Tour. It's going to be on Friday and Saturday, November 3rd and 4th. Two dates, so you got to get your tickets now. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. It's always a blast catching up with you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
All right, see ya.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.